All right, tell me about Mauri Rose.
Mauri Rose is the third person to win the race three times, joining Louis Meyer and Wilbur Shaw. And Mauri Rose was a contemporary of both. His first start was 1933, so although he was a contemporary, he came along just a little later than they did, but he ran against them for many years. He was a runner-up in 1934. He was born in Columbus, Ohio, by the way, and but he was an engineer. And in later years, I'll just go ahead and review the career a little bit and bring out a very interesting point about his later years. Anyway, he was third in 1940. In 41, he was on the pole with a Maserati, which dropped out. And then Lou Moore, who owned that car, had two others in the race. And he wasn't very happy with the way Floyd Davis was running, so he bought Floyd Davis in, took him out and put Mauri Rose in, and then Rose came up through the pack from 14th to first. I think he took the lead on the 162nd lap, and then that was his first victory. He and Floyd Davis actually were co-winners. Then in 40, he led the 46 race, but 47 and 48 he won for Lou Moore, driving front drive cars called Blue Crown Specials. And by that time, in 47, for a while he worked at Allison Engineering, and then he later moved to Studebaker. But while he was working at Allison, he would, and that's Allison just below 10th Street, and he would come over on a practice day and run a few practice laps during his lunchtime. He'd run a few practice laps and then go back to work, and then he would come back, qualify. He wouldn't hang around the track in the later years, and he would just, because he always had a car that was ready to go, so he'd just run a few practice laps, say, yep, it's ready, I'll be back for qualifications. He would come back, qualify, and then leave, and then come back for the race. And in fact, he was very proud. There was one of those years where he actually won the Indianapolis 500 and never took any time off work. And then 1950, he left Lou Moore after a disagreement in 49, and then he was third in 50, and then 51 was his last start. And,
Was it typical that guys would have jobs? Or were they professional drivers at that point? Or?
Well, he was always an engineer, so it was rather unusual. I mean, you had different situations. Many drivers in those days actually derived their income from the prize money. And then most drivers came from very meager beginnings, most of them. And so if they had businesses, it's what they had been able to put together with their prize money. But he always was an engineer, so he normally had a job, and certainly in the later years, because it got to the point where after the war, he was one of a number of drivers that only ran one race a year. The Indianapolis 500 was all he ran.